My wife didn't fall out of love. She weaponized it. Hello, Reddit. I'm Ethan, 34M. I used to believe relationships fall apart because someone doesn't try hard enough. I didn't realize that sometimes the real damage happens when love is still there, just carefully rationed. If you'd asked me 2 years ago whether my marriage was in trouble, I would have said no. Not because things were amazing, but because nothing was wrong in a way I could point to. No screaming matches. No infidelity. No obvious villain. Just distance. It crept in slowly enough that I kept adjusting around it instead of confronting it. The first time I noticed, it was over something stupid. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch. TV on. Phones in hand. I glanced over at Maya and realized I couldn't remember the last time she'd leaned against me without me initiating it. I set my phone down. Hey, I said. She replied, eyes still on her screen. Can we talk for a second? She sighed, not annoyed exactly, but not pleased either. About what? I don't know. Us, I guess. That got her attention. She finally looked at me. What about us? I hesitated. I didn't want to sound dramatic. I just feel like we don't really connect anymore. She frowned. That's not true. It kind of is, I said. We don't really talk like we used to. She leaned back against the couch. Ethan, I talk all day at work. When I get home, I just want to relax. I'm not asking for a 3-hour therapy session, I said quickly. Just you. Sometimes. She stared at me for a long second, then picked her phone back up. I'm right here, she said. The conversation was over. I remember sitting there thinking maybe I'm being needy. Maybe this was just what long-term relationships turned into and no one talked about it. So I let it go. A few weeks later, the bedroom changed. Not suddenly. Gradually. I'd reach for her at night and she'd shift away. I'm tired, she'd say. I've got a headache. My mind's just not there tonight. I accepted all of it. One night, after the 3rd rejection in a row, I finally asked, did I do something? She turned onto her side, facing away from me. No. Then why does it feel like you don't want me anymore? She went quiet. I just need you to be more present, she said eventually. What does that mean? I asked. She exhaled sharply. I don't want to have to explain everything. That sentence lodged itself in my chest. I stopped asking questions after that. Instead, I started performing. I woke up earlier, made coffee, packed lunches, took over chores without being asked, planned dates, remembered little details, validated feelings even when I didn't fully understand them. When she noticed, she'd soften briefly. Thanks for doing that, she'd say. Or, see, this is what I mean. Sometimes, if I'd been especially attentive, she'd touch me again, curl into me on the couch, kiss me longer than usual. Those moments felt like proof, like I was on the right track. So I doubled down. I didn't notice that I was the only one adjusting. The thing about trying harder is that it starts quietly. You don't wake up one day and decide, I'm going to rearrange my entire personality to keep this relationship alive. It happens in inches, in small compromises that feel reasonable at the time. I started keeping mental notes. Maya likes the kitchen wiped down before bed. She gets irritated if I ask questions when she's decompressing. She appreciates initiative, not discussion. None of this was written down. None of it was agreed upon. But I learned quickly that missing these invisible expectations came with consequences. One night, I forgot to switch the laundry before going to bed. The next morning, she stood in the doorway of the bedroom, arms crossed. So the laundry just sat there all night? I sat up. I'm sorry, I forgot. I'll run it now. She shook her head. That's not the point. I already felt that familiar tightness in my chest. Then what is? I don't want to have to remind you of everything, she said. It's exhausting. I wasn't asking you to remind me, I said carefully. She cut me off. You always do this. You turn it into a debate instead of just listening. I closed my mouth. That was becoming a pattern too. Any attempt to explain myself was framed as defensiveness. Any attempt to clarify was resistance. The only acceptable response was agreement. So I nodded. You're right. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. Thank you. That was it. No conversation about shared responsibility. No acknowledgement that people forget things sometimes. Just correction, followed by relief once I complied. Later that day, I cleaned the entire house. When she came home, she looked around. Oh, she said. You cleaned. Yeah, I replied. I wanted to make things easier for you. She smiled faintly. I appreciate that. That smile hit me harder than it should have, because it felt like approval. And approval had become currency. A few weeks later, we went out to dinner with friends. At the table, Maya laughed easily, touched my arm when she talked, leaned into me like nothing was wrong. One of our friends joked, "You two are disgustingly cute." Maya smiled. "We work at it." I smiled too, but something twisted in my stomach. On the drive home, I said, "You seemed happy tonight." She nodded. "I was. That was nice," I said. "I missed that." She glanced at me. "Then keep doing what you've been doing." I waited. "Which is?" She sighed. "You know, being attentive, stepping up." There it was again. Vague, unmeasurable, impossible to fully satisfy. Still, I tried. The bedroom became the clearest indicator of where I stood. If I'd had a good week, meaning no complaints, no miscues, no emotional needs of my own, she might initiate. Not often, but enough to keep hope alive. If I slipped, intimacy vanished completely. One night, after a long stretch of nothing, she kissed me deeply out of nowhere. I froze for half a second, then kissed her back. Afterward, lying there in the dark, I asked quietly, "Can I ask you something?" She hummed. "What? What made tonight different?" She was silent for a moment. "You've just been better lately," she said. "More supportive, less draining." That word landed hard. "Draining?" I repeated. She turned onto her side. "I don't mean it like that. I just mean when I don't have to manage everything, I have more energy." I stared at the ceiling. "So, when I do everything right," I said slowly, "you feel closer to me?" "Yes," she said, like this was obvious. "Isn't that how it's supposed to work?" I didn't answer, because something about that felt deeply wrong, but I didn't yet have the language for it. I started noticing how conversations about my feelings went. If I said, "I feel lonely," she'd respond with, "I can't handle this right now." If I said, "I miss being close to you," she'd say, "That makes me feel pressured." If I said, "I don't feel wanted," she'd say, "That's not fair. I'm doing my best." Everything circled back to her capacity. One night, I tried again carefully. "I'm not trying to blame you," I said. "I just want to understand where we're at." She rubbed her temples. "Why does everything have to be a conversation?" "I just want to feel close to you," I said. She looked at me, frustration flashing across her face. "And I want to feel like you're not another responsibility." That sentence stuck. Another responsibility. I nodded. "Okay." She softened immediately. "Thank you for understanding." That's when I realized something unsettling. Agreement made her feel safe. My silence made her comfortable. My needs made her withdraw. And every time I swallowed something important, the relationship smoothed out. So I kept swallowing. The real damage wasn't the lack of affection. It was the conditioning. I started checking myself constantly. Is this worth bringing up? Will this make her pull away? Is this me being needy again? I filtered my thoughts before speaking, edited my emotions, simplified my needs until they were barely visible. And when I succeeded, when I stayed agreeable long enough, she'd reward me with warmth. A hand on my leg, a smile across the room, a kiss that lingered just long enough to remind me what I was chasing. I didn't realize I was being trained. I thought I was improving. The night before everything shifted, we were sitting on the couch again. She was scrolling. I was watching her. I wanted to say, "I miss you." I wanted to say, "I don't feel like your partner anymore." I wanted to say, "I'm tired of earning your affection." Instead, I said nothing. She looked up. "What?" "Nothing," I said. "Just tired." She nodded, satisfied, and went back to her phone. That's when the thought first crossed my mind. Not fully formed, but dangerous all the same. What if love isn't supposed to feel like this? I went to bed that night feeling heavy. I woke up the next morning feeling different, like something inside me had started to loosen its grip. The shift didn't happen dramatically. There was no speech, no ultimatum, no decision announced out loud. I just stopped, not out of spite, not to punish her. I stopped because I was tired of feeling like every gesture had to be strategic, like every word needed to be weighed for risk. I stopped initiating conversations about us. I stopped asking how she felt. I stopped trying to read the room. First, nothing changed, which, in hindsight, should have told me everything. The mornings continued as usual. I made coffee. She drank it. I cleaned up. She noticed or didn't. We exchanged logistical information like coworkers on different shifts. "What time are you home?" "Late." "Okay." Silence filled the rest. What changed was internal. I started noticing how one-sided everything had been. I noticed that she never asked how I was unless I looked visibly off. And even then, it was usually followed by, "I don't have the energy for heavy stuff right now." I noticed how she talked at me, not with me. I noticed that if I didn't lean in, nothing bridged the gap. 3 days passed, then 5, then a week. She didn't mention intimacy, didn't touch me, didn't ask why I was quieter than usual. Instead, she seemed comfortable, relaxed even. One evening, I was reading on the couch when she sat down at the opposite end. "You've been less intense lately," she said. I looked up. "Intense?" "Yeah," she replied. "You're not always trying to talk things out. It's nice." "Nice." That word again. I nodded. "I figured you needed space." She smiled. "I do." Then she went back to scrolling. That was the moment something clicked into place. My absence wasn't alarming. My silence wasn't concerning. My emotional withdrawal was a relief. The second week was harder. Not because of her, but because of me. Every instinct in my body screamed to fix things, to lean in, to repair, to ask questions. But I didn't. I sat with the discomfort instead. And that's when I started to see the full picture. She began correcting me again. Not aggressively, casually. "You left a glass in the sink. You forgot to switch the lights off. You're supposed to put the towels on the second rack." I'd nod. Got it. No explanation. No defense. Just compliance. Her tone softened when I didn't push back. Thanks, she'd say. I appreciate you being receptive. Receptive. Like feedback at work. One night, she reached for me. It surprised me so much I almost flinched. She rested her head on my shoulder, fingers brushing my arm. I stayed still. After a minute, she pulled back slightly. Are you okay? Yes, I said. You seem distant. I shrugged. Just tired. She studied my face for a second, then nodded. Okay. And that was it. No follow-up. No concern. Just acceptance. That night, lying in bed beside her, I realized something terrifying. She didn't miss me. She missed the function I served. The emotional buffer. The problem solver. The constant reassurance engine. As long as the machine ran quietly, she was content. The third week was when she started to notice something was off. Not because she missed me, but because the balance of effort had shifted. She came home one evening and paused in the doorway. Did you not cook? No, I said. I ate earlier. She frowned. Why didn't you tell me? You didn't ask. She sighed. We're supposed to coordinate. Okay, I said. What do you want to do now? She hesitated. I guess I'll make something. She did, but she was irritated the whole time. Later, she said, you used to just take care of things. I looked at her. I still do. Not like before. I nodded. I'm doing my best. That phrase had worked on me for months. Now it sounded hollow. A few days later, she brought up her friend from yoga again. She says it's important for men to be proactive, Maya said, to anticipate needs. I kept my voice neutral. Did she say anything about communicating those needs? Maya frowned. Why are you being defensive? I'm not, I said. I'm asking. She crossed her arms. This is what I mean. You always push back. I held her gaze. You're pushing too. Her eyes widened slightly. That was new. The tension thickened. She started making passive comments. Some couples don't have to work this hard. I feel like I'm growing and you're just stagnating. I shouldn't have to explain basic things. I didn't argue. I didn't defend. I just listened. And the less I reacted, the more unsettled she became. One night, she finally snapped. What is going on with you? She demanded. You're here, but you're not here. I set my book down. I've been here the whole time. No, you haven't, she said sharply. You're pulling away. I met her eyes. I stopped chasing. She stared at me like I'd spoken another language. What does that mean? It means I stopped trying to earn affection. Her jaw tightened. No one asked you to do that. I let out a breath. You did, just not with words. Silence stretched between us. She stood up abruptly. I don't want to fight. I'm not fighting, I said. She shook her head, frustrated, and went to the bedroom. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not because we argued, but because for the first time I didn't feel welcome beside her. And the scariest part? I didn't feel the urge to fix it. I felt it done. The next evening, she handed me a piece of paper. I've been thinking, she said, and I think structure might help. I took it. I hadn't read it yet, but something in my chest already knew. This wasn't a step toward closeness. It was a system, and systems don't love you. She didn't hand it to me dramatically. No trembling hands. No tears. No, we need to talk. She just placed the paper on the coffee table like she was setting down mail and said, calmly, almost professionally, I think this could help us. I picked it up. At the top, centered and bolded, was a title that made my stomach drop. Relationship Alignment Framework. Framework. Not conversation. Not reflection. Not therapy. Framework. I skimmed the first few lines, then went back and read it slowly, because my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. It was formatted like a performance document. Bullet points. Subheadings. Metrics. I looked up at her. Is this serious? She nodded. Yes, I put a lot of thought into it. Section 1. Domestic Responsibility Optimization. It listed daily, weekly, and monthly expectations. Daily. Kitchen fully cleaned after dinner, no exceptions. All surfaces wiped. Trash taken out before bed. Weekly. Bathroom deep clean, including grout. Laundry completion by Sunday evening. Vacuuming all common areas. Monthly. Decluttering tasks. Home maintenance review. Some of these things I already did. Some I did most of the time. But seeing them written down like deliverables made my chest tighten. I flipped the page. Section 2. Emotional Presence Benchmarks. This is where my hands started shaking. Minimum of 3 unique compliments per day. Compliments must be specific and emotionally validating. Compliments about physical appearance capped at 1 per day. Minimum 1 proactive emotional check-in per week. Must be initiated by me. Must last at least 30 minutes. Must focus on her emotional state. I read that section twice, then a third time, then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my body didn't know what else to do. You're joking, I said. She didn't smile. I'm serious, Daniel. I need consistency. Consistency. I looked back down. Section 3. Romantic Initiative Standards. This section included 1 fully planned date night per week. All logistics handled by me. All costs covered by me. One spontaneous gift every 2 weeks. Minimum value specified. I felt dizzy. This wasn't a relationship. This was a subscription model. At the very bottom, under a bolded line, was the final section. Performance-based intimacy clause. My throat went dry as I read it. Successful completion of all benchmarks for 7 consecutive days may result in physical intimacy at the discretion of the partner. May result. At the discretion. Failure to meet any benchmark would reset the 7-day counter. I lowered the paper slowly. She was watching me closely now. So, she said, what do you think? I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel hurt. I felt empty, like something inside me had quietly shut down. You're telling me, I said carefully, that intimacy is now conditional. She sighed, like I was being difficult. I wouldn't call it conditional. I'd call it earned. Earned. I nodded slowly. And if I do all of this, I said, what happens then? She shrugged. Then we can reconnect. But only if I feel emotionally safe. I stared at her. For how long? I asked. What do you mean? How long do I have to keep doing this? I said. A month? A year? Forever? She frowned. Why are you being negative? I gestured at the paper. Because this isn't partnership. This is probation. Her eyes flashed. I'm trying to save our marriage. No, I said quietly. You're trying to control it. She stood up. I'm done talking about this, she snapped. If you want things to improve, the path is right there. She pointed at the paper. I need to know you're willing to do the work. I looked down at the list again, and something inside me, something that had been bending for months, finally stopped. I folded the paper carefully, met her eyes. Okay, I said. Her shoulders relaxed instantly. Thank you, she said. I knew you'd understand. She smiled like she'd won. She had no idea what she'd just done. That night, I lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. The list sat on the nightstand, and for the first time in a year, everything was crystal clear. This wasn't about love. This was about power. She had taken affection, the one thing that should never be transactional, and turned it into leverage. She had turned me into an applicant for my own marriage. And suddenly, I wasn't sad anymore. I was calm, because calm meant I could think, and thinking meant I could see the exit. The next morning, I woke up early. I made the coffee. I cleaned the kitchen, and I began executing the framework exactly as written. Not because I wanted to save the marriage, but because I wanted her to see what her system really looked like when followed to the letter. I didn't argue anymore. That was the first thing she noticed. No questions. No pushback. No, can we talk about this? Just compliance. Absolute, flawless compliance. I treated the relationship alignment framework like a contract I had already decided not to renew. Every morning, I woke up before my alarm. I made the coffee exactly the way she liked it, 2 sugars, oat milk, mug warmed first. While it brewed, I unloaded the dishwasher, wiped the counters, aligned the chairs at the table so they were perfectly straight. When she walked into the kitchen, I looked up and delivered the first compliment of the day. Maya, you chose a very efficient outfit for the weather. She blinked. Thanks. Compliment logged. Before leaving for work, I found her again. You handled your morning routine with impressive organization, I said calmly. Compliment number 2. She smiled, a little uncertain, but pleased. At noon, I sent her a text from my lunch break. I appreciate the emotional labor you contribute to our household. It is noted and valued. Compliment number 3. She replied with a heart emoji. By the time I got home, the house was spotless. I cleaned with surgical precision. No missed corners. No streaks. No ambiguity. When I finished the kitchen, I stood in the doorway and said aloud, daily post-dinner kitchen sanitation complete. She looked up from her phone, surprised. You don't have to announce it. The framework emphasizes completion, I said. Clarity helps. She laughed a little. Okay, well, thank you. The compliments became strange, not mean, not sarcastic, just hollow. You navigated traffic effectively today. Your choice of television programming demonstrates decisiveness. The meal you prepared contains a balanced flavor profile. She started reacting slower to them, like her brain was trying to catch up. One night she said, you're being weird. I'm following the structure you provided, I replied evenly. She didn't argue, because she couldn't. Friday night was our first scheduled date night. I made a reservation at a minimalist restaurant downtown, the kind with concrete walls, tiny plates, and prices that felt aggressive. I picked her up from the house even though we lived together. Opened the car door, pulled out her chair. The waiter asked how we were doing. We're aligned, Maya said with a smile. I nodded. We are executing agreed-upon objectives. She kicked me under the table. I looked at her. Was that accidental contact? She forced a laugh. Stop. The rest of the dinner was painful. She tried to talk about her day. I listened politely, nodded, asked clarifying questions but never connected. When she asked about my work, I answered in summaries. It's progressing according to timeline. That was it. She stared at me across the table. You're distant, she said. I'm present, I replied, emotionally regulated and attentive. She looked unsettled. At home, she lingered in the hallway. I knew what she was waiting for. By her own rules, I had earned the potential for intimacy. She stepped closer. So, do you want to? All weekly objectives have been met, I said calmly. However, I am choosing to rest tonight. Her mouth fell open slightly. What? I'm tired, I said. We can revisit next week. I walked past her into the guest room and closed the door. That was the first crack. The next week, I continued. Perfect execution. Zero warmth. She started trying to break the pattern. She wore the dress I used to love. Walked into the room slowly. What do you think? She asked. I glanced up from my laptop. The garment complements your height and posture. Silence. She waited. Nothing came. Her smile faded. She sat next to me on the couch one night, closer than she had in months. Her hand brushed mine. I gently moved my hand away. I need to prepare for tomorrow, I said. Time management is important. Her jaw tightened. You're doing this on purpose. I looked at her. I'm doing exactly what you asked. That's not true, she snapped. You're being cold. The framework does not specify tone, I replied. She stood up abruptly. You're trying to punish me. I shook my head. I'm trying to comply. The house felt different now. Not quiet, tense. She started crying more. First quietly, then loudly. I acknowledged it without engaging. I see that you're distressed, I said once. Would you like a tissue? She stared at me like I'd slapped her. What happened to you? She whispered. I didn't answer. One night, she lost it. She threw the paper, the framework, onto the table. I hate this thing, she shouted. I hate what you've turned into. I looked at it, then at her. You wrote it. That doesn't mean you had to take it like this. Like what? Like a robot. I nodded. That's how systems work. She covered her face and sobbed. I just wanted you to try harder, she said through tears. I did, I replied softly. You just didn't notice until I stopped being human. That night, something inside her finally broke. But something inside me had already been gone for weeks. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vindictive. I was finished. The next morning, I packed a bag. When she saw it, panic flooded her face. Where are you going? I need space, I said. This isn't fair, she cried. You didn't even give it a chance. I looked at her. Really looked at her. You turned love into a performance review, I said quietly. I passed, and I still lost. She reached for me. I stepped back. I left, and for the first time in a year, the silence felt honest. The quiet after leaving her wasn't the kind you hear in movies. It didn't feel peaceful at first. It felt empty. The kind of empty that echoes when you put your keys down in a place that isn't home yet. The kind that settles into your bones at night when you realize there's no one down the hall. No familiar breathing. No shared routine to anchor you. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment across town. It smelled faintly of fresh paint and something floral the previous tenant must have liked. The furniture was minimal: bed, couch, desk. Everything had a purpose. Nothing had history, and somehow that helped. The divorce itself was anticlimactic. No screaming matches. No dramatic courtroom speeches. Just paperwork. She tried, at first, to reframe everything. She told people she'd been carrying the emotional load alone. That she'd had to parent me. That I had checked out when things got hard. I didn't argue. I didn't correct her. Anyone who asked me what happened got the same response. We weren't compatible anymore. That was enough. The people who mattered could read between the lines. A few months after I moved out, she emailed me. Not angry. Not demanding. Careful. She wrote about therapy. About growth. About how she finally understood that the list had been a mistake. That she'd been afraid. That she hadn't known how to ask for what she needed. She ended with, I think we could try again. I don't want to lose you. I stared at that email for a long time. Then I closed it. I didn't reply, not because I hated her, but because I finally understood something important. An apology doesn't undo a power dynamic. Insight doesn't restore trust. And love that has to be negotiated is already over. For a long time I thought I had failed. That I hadn't been attentive enough. Emotionally intelligent enough. Proactive enough. I thought love was something you could optimize if you just tried harder. I was wrong. Love isn't a checklist. It isn't earned through compliance. It isn't withheld as leverage. Love is mutual effort without scorekeeping. And the moment it turns into a system, someone is already losing. I still like quiet mornings. Still organize my books the way I like. Still clean the kitchen after dinner. But now I do it because I want to. Not because I'm afraid of consequences. I started seeing someone new, slowly, carefully. No frameworks. No metrics. Just conversations. Laughter. The freedom to be human without feeling evaluated. And for the first time in a long time, I feel something that isn't tension or obligation. I feel respected. My final thoughts and advice for those who are reading this or listening to this is, if you ever find yourself trying to earn basic affection from someone who claims to love you, stop. That's not self-improvement. That's self-erasure. And walking away doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes it's the first thing you do right.
Thank you everyone for taking your time to listen to my stories that are posted in this channel. Your engagement and entertainment are a huge part of my motivation, and I hope you all will continue on supporting me in the future. Once again, thank you for watching my videos. For more content like this, please consider subscribing to my channel.